four friends set out for a fishing trip towards the Gulf of Mexico. During a severe storm, they capsize their boat and find themselves in icy water in the open sea. The victims begin a struggle for survival, suffering from hypothermia, dehydration, and dangerous predators. The film, based on true events, begins in the open sea, where a storm is raging and four young men have been clinging to life and an overturned boat for 13 hours. Then the story shifts to a week earlier, to a sports training camp in Florida, where NFL players are training. Among them are Marky Cooper, Corey Smith, and their friend Nick Schuyler. In the evening, they gather with their wives for a barbecue by the pool. They discuss the upcoming deep-sea fishing trip. Will Blakely, who was fired, joins them. To support their friend, the athletes invite him to Saturday's fishing trip. Early Saturday morning, on the 28th of February 2009, Will's visit wakes up the sleepy Nick. While the host tries to wake up, the guest is in the kitchen making sandwiches for the fun trip. After saying goodbye to his wife, Nick puts on the jacket his mother gave him and jumps into the car with his friend. They drive to Cooper's house. He is already waiting for them with the boat loaded on the trailer. Cooper says goodbye to his wife and daughter before setting off. It was still dark when the friends arrived at the pier where they launched the boat into the water. To ensure nothing distracts from the exciting fishing, the guys packed their phones in waterproof bags to protect them from the salty seawater and hand them over to Nick. Will, just in case, asks if there is a radio on the boat, not wanting to be out of touch. At dawn, the boat with the friends heads out into the open water. Unaware that at this time Nick's mom Marcia is calling him to warn about an approaching storm. The morning news reported an unfavorable weather forecast. Next, the woman calls Stu, Nick's father, to share her concerns. The old man tries to reach his son, but busy with fishing, he doesn't hear the phone in his backpack. After trying their luck in one spot, the fishing crew moves the boat to another location, hoping for a good catch there. We had to row either to the Black Rocks or the White Cliff. At the new spot, Cooper drops the anchor. The fishing has been going on for 8 hours. Besides the modest catch of the friends, Nick caught a bout of seasickness and slept at the bottom of the boat to recover. After recovering, he talks with Cooper, complaining about his difficult life. He is overwhelmed by a midlife crisis, making him reflect on what he has done in his life and where it is heading. During their heartfelt conversation, they notice that the weather, like a New Year's salad in early February, is starting to go bad. They decide to return to shore. Corey tries to lift the anchor, but it got caught on something metallic at the bottom and won't come up. Deciding that the issue can be easily solved with strength, the other fishermen join in pulling the rope, but unsuccessfully, the sea proves stronger. Cooper decides to use ingenuity. Securing the rope, he starts the boat's engine so that the mechanics do all the work for the people. However, the result exceeded human expectations. Unable to detach the anchor, the boat stupidly reared up and, thanks to a large wave, capsized upside down. The unfortunate fishermen find themselves in the seawater, bobbing like huge floats for giant fishing rods. Realizing that things are taking a turn for the worse, they grab onto the overturned boat, which stays afloat thanks to its design. They try to rock the vessel so that inertia will return it to its original upright position. But here too, they fail. Without a point of leverage, even athletes are powerless. Cooper realizes that the anchor rope is holding the boat in place. To get rid of the obstacle, he dives into the water and finds the rope, returning to his friends with it. The football player tries to cut the rope from the propeller blade while his friends keep him afloat. For a change, this endeavor is fully successful. On land, Nick Paul's wife, seeing a report about the approaching hurricane, calls her husband to make sure he's okay, but reaches the answering machine. By evening, as it starts to get dark and the weather worsens, the friends have been in the open sea without a boat for 5 hours. Realizing that sooner or later the overturned vessel will sink, the guys decide to get life jackets from the storage. For this, Cooper, having undressed so that wet clothes do not restrict his movements, dives down under the hull of the boat. At that moment, while he is below, the boat sinks a little, starting to go under. Cooper surfaces with one life jacket, then Will dives next. He brings back another jacket. Cooper dives for a third, after which it's Corey's turn, but he returns empty-handed.
The supplies run out.
At this moment, the distressed notice the lights of some ship in the night. Shouts do not help to attract attention. Nick lights a flare, but the departing vessel no longer notices the scarlet light in the darkness. The next chance for rescue becomes the phones left in waterproof bags. Maybe they can catch a signal and call for help. Nick, with a burning flare, dives into the water to retrieve the backpack with things from the cabinet. Climbing onto the boat's hull, the fishermen take the phones out of the bags, but there is no signal in the open sea. At this moment, a passing wave washes over the guys. On the shore, a worried Paula calls Marcia. They are both concerned about the fact that Nick has not returned yet, despite the bad weather. Additionally, a police patrol found Cooper's pickup with a boat trailer, having logically concluded that someone went out to sea and did not return. The data is transmitted to the Coast Guard, where Captain Timothy Close takes control of the situation. Washed away by the wave, the friends swim back to the boat's hull, rejoicing in the fact that the rain has finally stopped. However, they rejoice too soon. The weather drives a huge wave at them, which again separates the friends and the swimming equipment. Lost in the raging sea, the distressed try to orient themselves by the flashes of lightning. One of them manages to find the boat. He calls the others, and they swim towards the sound of his voice. By this time, they have already spent 10 hours in the water. Despite Corey's encouraging speech, Cooper loses strength from hypothermia in Nick's arms.
The friends try to warm him up by huddling together in one big warm pile.
At this time, Cooper's wife is calling Paula to find out if her husband has gold. However, no one knows anything. There is no news from the spouses who went fishing. After this conversation, Paula calls the Coast Guard to share her concerns that her husband got caught in a storm. Captain Close takes the information into account, clarifying details about the number of people who went out to sea and the size of the boat. Considering that there was no distress signal, he suspects that they crashed before they could send a source. He orders the aircraft to be launched to try to find them from above. After 20 hours in the open sea, Cooper starts having an uncontrollable panic attack. He throws Will into the water, forcing his friends to restrain him so he doesn't worsen the already dire situation. His condition worsens due to hypothermia. The rescue plane in the air, flying over the Bay Area, cannot really find anything. Visibility is zero. Even the night vision device doesn't help much. Meanwhile, Cooper's wife is informed that the situation status has been changed to distress, and they ask her to find the GPS sensor data on the boat, if there was one. Having found the sensor with Paula's help, she gives Captain Close the coordinates where the boat was last marked. It turns out that there was a shipwreck at that location. That's exactly where Cooper was planning to go fishing, as he told his wife. Chaser. The Coast Guard sends a helicopter to the received coordinates. The survivors are suffering from hypothermia, especially the athletes who have lost all their protective fat over years of training. Another wave washes Cooper off the boat. Nick jumps into the sea after his friend but cannot find him. Exhausted, the man stopped resisting the elements. Corey, the football colleague, continues to have a fever accompanied by hysteria. Trying to hold his friend, Will is knocked into the water but returns back on board. Mourning the lost Cooper, Nick notices the lights of a rescue plane in the stormy sky. However, the rescuers above see nothing of what is happening on the surface of the raging sea, and turning around, they fly away. Meanwhile, the helicopter reaches the specified coordinates. When Nick tries to signal with the light from his phone, the airplane pilot reports seeing flashes of light. The rescuers in the helicopter check the area through night vision equipment, but find nothing. Due to the intensified storm, they are forced to return to base, leaving the survivors in despair. Captain Close decides to make a pawn move, to send the destroyer Tornado to the disaster area under the command of Lieutenant Patrick Peshka. The Lieutenant of Internal Communications informs the crew about a new task, search and rescue of the crash victims. When the grey rainy morning arrives, Nick and Will notice that they are alone on the boat. Corey is missing and does not respond. It is logical to assume that he shared Cooper's unfortunate fate. Nick realizes that he hasn't frozen yet only because he's wearing the jacket his mom gave him, and hints to his fellow sufferer that he could use some extra clothing too. At this time, curious sharks swim up to the boat, causing the people to panic even more. Triangular fins carefully circle around the survivors, subtly hinting that fishing is unpredictable. Today you catch fish, and tomorrow the fish catch you. Or maybe they were attracted by the sandwiches Will had carefully prepared. Falling out of the bag, they float around the sinking boat. To distract himself, Will starts the motor. There will be a conversation about God, but Nick does not share his aspirations. With childlike innocence, he blames a higher being for everything that happened. Meanwhile, a news report comes out about the missing fisherman and that the Coast Guard has stopped the search. Marcel goes to the Coast Guard headquarters to give Captain Klaus a dressing down, but he says the reporters were mistaken. The search continues, not by air, but by the destroyer Tornado, and when the weather permits, planes will take to the sky. 2 survivors continue clinging to life, and the hull of the boat, repeatedly washed back into the sea by the waves. To at least solve this problem, Nick tears off a cable from the boat motor so they can tie themselves, increasing stability. At some point, they see both a helicopter and a plane in the sky, but they fly too far away to spot the 2 people amidst the waves. For the men, the agonizing weight of the unknown continues. Will suggests diving to get food from the boat. The feeling of hunger does not play in their favor in this situation. Since Nick cannot untie the hose from the motor, Will retrieves the supplies in 2 attempts. After having a meal, they see something like a fire in the fog, then take a phone out of the backpack to call for help. But there is no signal. They are far from the shore. Then the guys decide to swim to the source of the ghostly light. However, after swimming away from the boat, they lose sight of the landmark and also drift apart, getting lost in the fog among the waves. The friends call out to each other but cannot coordinate in the watery chaos. Then they decide to return to the boat where they eventually meet. Pilots report to Klaus that the search continues but without success. The captain of the Tornado also circles the waves but with the same result. Will and Nick have been in the open sea for 30 hours. Tormented by hypothermia, Will is troubled by the question of why the overturned boat has not sunk yet. Unable to find an answer, he curls up and lies on its bottom. Will asks his friend to say goodbye to his family for him, after which he tries to untie the cable to be washed away into the sea. Nick tries to stop his friend, but a wave washes him away, and now his exhausted body is tied to the cable. A new wave finally takes the body of Will, who has lost the will to live, leaving Nick completely alone and in despair. Although the Coast Guard has lost all hope of finding the missing, Captain Close is ready to continue the search. Meanwhile, the destroyer Tornado wraps up its futile circling just for peace of mind, leaving observers on board. Even Paula leaves a voicemail for her missing husband, admitting that she has almost come to terms with losing him. Nick himself is traversing the ocean, tied to the motor, sitting with his back to the direction of movement. He doesn't immediately notice the ship's lights in the thickening darkness. The man waves his arms, trying to attract the ship's attention, but unsuccessfully. It disappears into the night. Thus, another morning comes. Nick spent 42 hours at sea. In a fit of despair, he unties the hose that helps him stay near the motor. He lies on his back, exhausted, on the boat, not even hearing another motorboat approaching. He was spotted from a destroyer, and help was sent. The sailors report to the Coast Guard, and Captain Close directs a helicopter to the coordinates. Nick regains consciousness, unable to understand if the commotion around him is real or imagined. Once rescued, he regains his senses and states his name, and soon his mother and wife receive the joyful news. However, for Cooper's wife and daughter, the news is not good at all. The others were unsuccessfully searched for several more days before being declared lost at sea. 6 months later, the survivor Nick still heard their voices in his head.